Hey geometry students, this is problem number 1 from your Unit 1 test retake review. So you're supposed to find the length and the midpoint of each of these segments. So if I'm starting with just the lengths, I got to find how far apart these points are, and the math way to do it is just to take whatever the numbers are, I'm just going to call them A and B, subtract them. Now the order that you subtract technically matters. If you always make sure you do big minus small, then you're going to be fine. But if you just take your numbers and subtract, you're sometimes going to get negative, and length can never, ever, 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 ever be negative. It's always positive. So the easier math way to do it is just to put an absolute value, which means take the negative off. You're going to get a positive answer. So if I find the length of EF, I see my two numbers. E is at -2, F is at 3, so I'm going to just subtract those two. So I'm going to take -2 and a 3, and I'm going to put a minus sign between that. When I put that in my calculator, -5 comes out. You are never standing -5 feet from somebody, so it's just going to be absolute value. Take that negative off. If I would have flipped the order and instead subtracted not 3 minus 2, but if I put a minus sign between those, then I would have gotten +5. But I'm just going to, it doesn't matter the order, put a minus sign between it, take the negative off. I'm going to do the same thing for F and H. I'm going to take my two numbers, put a minus sign between it, take the negative off. So I'm getting a -3. When I take off that negative, it's a +3. For IE, I is at 12, E is at -2. Here's the mistake most people do. That's not what I just said. I said, take your two numbers and put a minus sign between them. You can't just use a negative sign as your minus, because that is a -2 that is being subtracted. There is no negative, but it's a good habit just to remember to take off the negative. You will get a +14 for that distance. And last one on this row is EH. That is -2 to 6. So I'm going to take my two numbers, put a minus sign between it, take the negative off. If you cannot remember and you keep screwing up these positive and negatives, get a calculator out. Your Chromebook came with a calculator on it. Ask your math teacher if you can't remember where to find it, but you shouldn't be reduced to just trying to Google it or use your phone's calculator. Learn how to use an actual math-centric calculator to do these. So that's when you're wanting length. When you want midpoint, midpoint was when we just averaged. So I'm going to take those same two numbers, but when you average something, you add them up and divide by however many there are. So I'm going to have letter A and letter B. Those are just the numbers. So for EF, I'm going to take those same two numbers of a -2 and a 3. And just like before, the order doesn't matter. Take your two numbers, put a plus sign in between, and then cut it in half. So I'm going to add first, because you have to add first. -2 plus 3 is +1. Half of 1 is a 0.5. So sometimes you'll get not whole numbers, and that's just going to be okay. F is at 3, H is at 6. I'm going to add them up, divide by 2. 3 plus 6 is 9. You could leave it as 9/2, or you could just do 4.5. IE, I'm going to take my two numbers, 12 and a -2. I'm going to add it up and divide by 2. So 12 plus -2 is a 10. Half of 10 is 5. This is finding the point that is in the middle. So this is not anything to do with the length here. It's just saying what dot is in the middle. Lastly, EH. E was at -2, H is at 6. So I'm going to take my two numbers of a -2 and a 6. I'm going to add it up and divide by 2. -2 plus 6 is 4, and half of 4 is 2.